stay tuned. At the end of the video, I'm going to go over how to set up this mask feature you saw me use. ...2014 Nissan Maxima. This car was originally a no crank, no start. I think it's had a new starter put on it, probably a battery, and then it became a crank no start. I get called to look at it. These are the codes that I see right now. Barometric pressure sensor, which is basically the evap pressure sensor. Engine coolant temp, engine oil temp, battery current sensor. I actually saw a printout where it had B1 cam codes and crankshaft position codes. They're not present right now, but I haven't really messed with this car because these intermittent or these wiring problems, I just like to tread lightly until it's time not to tread lightly. Nothing like accidentally fixing the damn car and then it'll haunt you forever. Usually when I see a lot of codes like these are like 5-volt reference style sensors. There's a lot of shared powers and grounds either in the computer or in the harnesses. That's kind of where my mind's right now, so I'm gonna let the scan tool do a little work for me. They said I don't want to get in and start back probing a bunch of stuff yet and accidentally fix this car. So AC pressure, I know there's no code for that, but it's one of the 5-volt sensors, so I'm gonna look at that. Battery current sensor, we'll look at that. Engine oil temp, it actually coded that. Coolant temp, there's evap pressure. I'm just randomly picking these just to see what I see and get some direction. Let's go power steering signal. There's no DTC for that, I don't think, but it hadn't set one, so we're gonna look at it anyway. So let's hit start. Alright, I already see problems. So for one, it's about 70 degrees in the shop. This car has not been run in days, so I know the coolant temp is not 104. The power steering pressure switch is showing on, which again, the car's not running. There's no fluid pressure, so that's not good. Evap pressure, that's a good voltage for my area. Not sure why we have that code. Engine oil temp 275, not good. AC pressure sensor 3.785, that would indicate it's got over 300 pounds of pressure. I'm not really believing that. I'm not going to go discharging the AC to find out because that really isn't the root of my problem. That's just kind of tying everything together with a possible power or ground problem. Battery current sensor, that's not right either. That should probably be, well, there's no current flowing. It would probably be next to zero. I don't think 5105 is a good number because there again, it's not running. So when I see this type of stuff, I'm gonna attack whatever these sensors are that are easiest to get to, which I think is going to be the coolant, and I'm just going to really lightly back probe power and ground and just see where I'm at. I'm not going to try to disturb too much stuff until I get more direction as to where I'm going with this, and I will do my best to film it along the way. Alright, so yeah, it definitely has a new starter on it down there. Got some race car stuff here. New battery. This has all been moved around for some reason. I'm checking 5-volt reference and ground at the coolant temp sensor. Hope you guys can see it right there. And you would think that that would be a good number. I just simply have key on, but that's on the ground circuit. So we have an open somewhere on this ground circuit. I've also checked the same ground circuit at an oil temp and a few other sensors. I'm just going to show you this one, and I'll go over a few things on the wiring diagram. So I'm going to get the scope out and I'm going to start shaking wires. I'll bring you back in on that. So here's the wiring diagram, and where I was testing is
I was right at the coolant temp sensor number 2. So this is our 5-volt reference in, and this is our ground side. So I had the 4.8 volts right there. I didn't show it, but I had it right here. So everything needs to be grounded through 52. Now take note where 52 is. It's right there. If I only had those 2 codes, I might jump in here and try to bike probe this, but I had the other codes, so I want to just kind of see where they ground at. They don't ground with this, but they could be internal. I don't know that, but I'm going to just take a peek. So let's see. We scroll across, and it had a battery sensor code in it. Let's see. One of these is going to be the ground. It's usually in the middle. Let's see what pinout 44 is. 44. Ground. Okay, so 52 and 44. They're not beside each other, but they're close. We had a power steering switch issue. Almost see 48's in the middle. Yep, 48's the ground. So 44, 48, 52. It's starting to look a little odd. I didn't show it, or when I got there, it didn't have the cam and crank codes in it. So just by trying to start this engine, the vibration was changing this car a little bit, and that's why I was so delicate and not just wanting to jump in and start pulling connectors apart, because, man, you accidentally fix a car like this, it is never fixed. That thing will leave. It'll go 5 miles, get towed back. I've been down this road before. So when I get these ever-changing intermittent type codes, man, I go straight to the big guns. I get the Pico out, and I tread really, really lightly. So let's see. It had a crank code in it. The guys had a printout for me. So let's see where the ground is for the crank code. Is it 65? Nope, not in the middle on that one. Is it 60? Okay, 60 is the ground. So now I'm 44, 48, 52, and 60. All right. And it had a B1 intake cam code, which would be that one, I think. 64. What's the ground? Okay, there's the ground. See, I'm noticing that the grounds for all these sensors are right on this rail. All right. Is that coincidence? It had a refrigerant pressure deal in it. 39 and 40. Which one's the ground? Nope. 39. Okay, 40. Okay, so all the problem sensors are on this bottom row. So, man, I am thinking right now this thing has something wrong with this connector. I took a look at it, and honestly, I either overlooked it or I did not realize it was slightly cocked. I know now because after I found the problem. So I decided I'm not taking any chances with this thing. I'm not going to mess with this harness. I'm going to go ahead and get the Pico out. And I am still back probed in the exact same spot as you saw with the voltmeter. I'm going to be right there. And I used what they call a mask feature. It'll catch the glitch and make a sound to alert you, hey, something just went on. You'll see that in the video. And if you guys hang out till after the video, I'll show you how to set up a mask feature and how I use it for catching glitches on CAN network. It's not something you use every day, but it is a tool in your toolbox. It's a cool little deal, especially if you can't have eyes on the scope while you're messing with harnesses. So, hope you guys enjoyed up to this point. I will play a few more in-shop videos, and I want to shout out to my auto nerds over there. You guys have been using the link. I want to thank you for that. Recently, someone purchased a Pico kit. I'm not sure who you are, but thank you for that. And hopefully you utilize the forum and all the things that come with the Pico kit. That stuff you can't put a price on. it's a never-ending learning with using this scope, and I'm sure the newer models, may even do more. Pico 7's out. I'm using Pico 7 on this, so it's exciting times. So grab yourself a scope if you can, and thanks again for watching so far.
All right, I got the scope hooked up. I'm on the ground side of this sensor where the voltage is. This should be close to 0, but it's got 4 volts on it. I'm going to start wiggling harnesses and moving things around, and I'm going to focus down around this starter because that's the only thing I can see that's been disturbed. And I'm going to mess with these harnesses and just see if I can get this thing to act up. I have a mask set up. I could go over this a little bit better at the house versus in the shop, but basically I've got this thing set up to ding and to stop the capture if I come on something. See, I'm running about 5 volts, so I've got it set up so if it drops, like if I find the issue or the ground completes, the voltage should drop. It should ding at me and save the capture, or freeze the screen, and then I can save the capture. So I'm gonna go wiggle the harness. I think it's at the computer, but hopefully this is coming out. It did ding. You saw it saved it here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off, and I'll show you what I think is going on. Hold on. All right, so I'm going to have to do a lot of editing, just show you guys the mask feature. But I think right here, these are kind of like a pivot point to pull these connectors in, and it looks like that one's broken. I don't think the connector's fully seated. I hope that's coming out. I think the computer was disturbed maybe during the starter replacement. But I'm going to put you on the screen and show you something. That's with me wiggling the harness at the computer right there. So I'm going to investigate that, get it figured out, and call this one a fix.
I didn't realize that my flashlight was putting such a damn glare that you couldn't see what I was talking about, so I took this quick picture. This is the transmission control unit. This is the engine control unit, and kind of right in front of all this is the battery. That'll give you an idea where I'm at under the car. This top plug, there's 3 plugs. That top plug is this one right here. It's kind of blurry. This is the plug that had the issue. The grounds that I was showing you are on this side. Now you see that little knob right there? That is so when you push the connector in and then you rotate this clasp, it pulls the connector in tight and holds it. And this gray silver silicone looking thing is a weather seal. Well, it has one on this side and one would be on this side. This connector is the one that was broke. The tab on the far side was good. You can see it's broken off right there. It should be right there. So when whomever messed with this computer, they pushed this in, and then when they rotated the clasp, it tweaked. It pushed this side in and kicked this side out a little. So a lot of my connections on this side, which included all those grounds, weren't happy. And then when you would just crank the engine, the vibration would make or not make these grounds in here. That's what made it so intermittent. And this thing's kind of hard to see because it's buried in behind everything. But like I was saying, I did not want to get in here and touching and moving things around, because if I would have just barely touched this connector, it probably would have seated until the first pothole bump. I mean, Lord knows. And it would have been sitting right back in the shop. and I'd have been getting a call and nobody would have been happy. So this was broken off. I reseated the connector. I pulled it out and pushed it in extremely tight, and then rotated the clasp, and then I put the top one back in. I started it, and you'll see on the end there how everything was fixed. I told them what to do. I don't know what they did. All I know is that's the problem. The car left running. Unfortunately, unless you replace the computer, unless you do something really off the wall and glue this thing together, which I would not recommend, because you may be the next guy that has to pull this thing back apart, and it would never come apart. So that was the fix. A couple more little in-car videos, and then I'm going to go over how to set up a mask. Appreciate you guys watching.
All right, so I was able to push the connector back together. You can see we got no DTCs. We'll go back and look at some of the data we looked at before. Let's see, let's do this. I can't remember all of them we looked at. Battery current sensor was a little bit wonky, I remember that. Coolant temp, oil temp. I'm going to hit engine speed, we'll see it start. Evap, I think evap was okay. We'll look at it anyway. Let's see. Power steering, I remember looking at that. That's probably good enough. So now we're down to 779. That's off. Oil temp is 79. That would all make sense to me. 4.14. All right, I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. Oh, okay, 2355. That's a good number, not running. I think I just locked up my consult. I did. Well, you can see it's running here. I think consult froze up. Sometimes they act silly when the battery voltage gets a little low. Oh yeah. Oh gosh, you gotta love it when this happens. Hold on, I'll bring you back. All right, here it is. The coolant temperature's climbing because the engine's been running while the consult rebooted. There's the RPM. The power steering switch is off because I'm not turning it. We're back to that. That's a good number. That's a good number. And the battery current sensor is that because we are running. And it is probably charging the battery up because I've done a lot of key on testing. Probably had her a little low. I made some recommendations. Unfortunately, when those computers break like that, the best fix is to replace the computer. I'm not sure what they're going to do. You can just actually push the connector back together real good, which is the way it's running now. May never vibrate loose. It may vibrate loose next week. But the car's diagnosed, and that's kind of what I was brought in to do. And we're going to move on to the next one. Appreciate you guys watching.
So the thing with using a mask is you have to have a steady signal. What I have here is just a good can signal, can high and can low. You really need a signal that is going to be flat and is either going to drop to ground or short to voltage, kind of like what this car was doing. And I'll show you why. So let's just make a mask signal for channel A, and I'll show you why it's not going to work. So we would go to mask. Oh, and by the way, we're on Pico 7 again. I'm starting to transition over to 7. That seems to be the way of the future. I still love my 6, but I'm trying to introduce you guys, especially on the channel, to 7, and get myself familiar with it too. So let's go to mask. If your mask isn't here, you would click more and then find it in here and then put a star on it, and then it'll just move it over here. That's kind of like apps on your phone. You put them wherever you like. So I'm going to go with mask, and we're just going to make a mask of channel A. First thing I like to do, I think default, it shows percentages. I like to use SI because I understand these numbers more. So 600 millivolts, that's the measurement between the lowest point here and where the mask is. So if you loosen or tighten this, depending on how sensitive you want it to catch. So I'm just going to leave it, well, I'm just going to put it back to 600. Okay, 2 milliseconds would be from the falling edge of your signal to where you want the mask to catch. So let's just leave it like it is, and we're going to measure this. So let's apply, and there's our mask. Let me move this over. So just real quick, so we had 2 milliseconds from the bottom and the top, or 600 millivolts, I'm sorry. So 570, I could probably zoom in and fine tune that. And then the other number was 2 milliseconds, so somewhere around in here. So you can see 1.8, like I said, I could zoom in and tweak that. But the thing is, you understand what I'm saying. Now the problem with the CAN signal, as you can see, it's ever changing. So the minute that this big packet moves to right there, it's going to trigger this thing. And that's really not what you want, because it would constantly be triggering, and you would be getting a lot of false readings. So how do we combat that? Well, if you add high-speed CAN to low-speed CAN, you're going to get about 5 volts. Because if you just average, what the high speed is and the low speed, it's about 5 volts, and it makes a nice flat line. So let's delete this guy, and let's make this happen. So we're going to go to our math channels, and we're going to go A plus B. That's high plus low, and we're going to turn it on. And now check that out. That's more of a flat line. So let's make a mask of that. Now, hypothetically, let's say you had a car in with an intermittent CAN failure, and you wanted to shake some harnesses and wiggle this and mess with connectors. You could take and make your mask now, and we're going to make it of A plus B, and it's going to give you something there. So right now we know this line's at 5 volts. So if my CAN high or my CAN low, I don't know which one has the problem, but if either one of them go to ground or go to voltage, we know that it's going to change this 5 volts, either up or down. So what we could do is we could tighten this up a little bit. We can say if there's a 500 millivolt differential, or if there's a 500 millivolt change, whether to the positive or the negative, it's going to trip the mask. The 2 milliseconds, I would just leave that alone, because all it's going to trigger off of is noise. If by some chance you've got too much noise in here, you can always broaden this, and I think it would just go away. See how the pink is now gone? So now it should just trigger up and down. Now, if this is not live, so I can't demonstrate it. I guess I could have if I had more time. But after you set this up, you hit apply, and now it's going to put it on the big screen. One more step to take. So right now, after this thing catches, you're going to want the scope to do something. So we're going to go over to action, and let's go ahead and change the event. So what I like to do is, I don't want the scope to do anything until the mask fails. So if this thing shorts or goes to voltage, I don't want the scope to do anything until it does that. And we're going to go here to actions, and we're going to add. You can have it play a sound. I'm sure you can download some sirens. I like it to stop capture, just like I did in the video. And then I want it to play a sound. You can select the sound. You can do a beep, a bell. I mean, whatever it is suits your fancy. I'll just go with a beep. And if you had a custom one, I'm not even sure what you could put on there. Horns blowing, ducks quacking, chickens, roosters, who knows. But that is how you set it up. Then you would hit start, and then start listening for your sound. And when it fails, it's going to show you the fail. And the way we have it set up, it's going to hold that screen. And then when the buffer gets full, it's going to beep or do whatever to it, and then that should get your attention. I would use a little faster time base, but my advice would be set this thing up. Set it up, say at 0 volts. Bring your mask up, bring your mask down, and then just take your 2 leads and touch them to a battery. Obviously, when you touch to the battery, it's going to jump to 12 volts. Set that mask up, make sure you got a good understanding of how it works, how fast you want it to beep at you, and your time base, and get used to it before you're actually on a live car. You know, when you're really up to bat and it's the bottom of the ninth, you want to make sure you got your best stuff, you know. So I don't use the mask very often. I thought it was applicable for this car because I had my back turned while I was messing around, and of course when I heard the beep I turned around and I kind of almost knew where the problem was, so that helped too. But the mask feature is easier to use on Pico 7 than 6. The last time I used it was on Pico 6. It's a different setup, but essentially it does the same thing. Like I said, it works really good with CAN, and you add the two together and you get your nice flat line. So I hope this helps. Thank you guys for commenting. My channel is growing like a weed. I love it. The Auto Nerds link is there. Those guys are there to help. And tonight, the date is, let me see, this is Thursday the 21st. There is a Zoom style 2-hour training tonight for those of you that are Pico group members. So if you can, be there. I'll always try to be there on Thursdays, but Thursday at my household is kind of family night, and it's just kind of hard for me to break away and do that. Sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. So thanks again. You guys rock. Catch you on the next one.